In the 4th century before Christ, the Greek philosopher Plato wrote about a civilization that vanished beneath the waves. He called it Atlantis. For over 2,000 years, scholars have debated whether this story was mere allegory or a memory of something real. Plato claimed he heard the tale from his ancestor Solon, who learned it from Egyptian priests in the city of Sais. According to these priests, Atlantis was a powerful empire that existed 9,000 years before Solon's time. It was located beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic Ocean. The island was larger than Libya and Asia combined, and its people possessed technology and knowledge far beyond their age. But in a single day and night of catastrophic earthquakes and floods, Atlantis sank into the sea and disappeared forever. Most historians dismiss this as fiction, a philosophical parable Plato invented to illustrate his ideas about the perfect state. But what if Plato was describing a real place? What if there is a location on Earth where every detail he gave matches perfectly? Plato did not write a vague legend. He gave specific, measurable details. He described Atlantis as a large island with a central plain surrounded by mountains that sheltered it from the north winds. The plain itself measured 3,000 stadia by 2,000 stadia, approximately 340 miles by 230 miles. At its center stood a low mountain where the first kings built their palace. The Atlanteans carved this hill into a series of concentric rings, alternating between land and water. There were 3 rings of water and 2 rings of land, perfectly circular, engineered with precision. Massive stone bridges connected the rings, and a great canal cut through them, allowing ships to sail from the ocean directly to the central island. The city was rich in metals, especially a mysterious substance Plato called Orichalcum, which glowed like fire. Temples were covered in gold, silver, and ivory. But here is the critical point. Plato also said Atlantis was destroyed by earthquakes and floods around 9,600 years before his time. If we take his timeline literally, that places the disaster near the end of the last ice age, a period of massive geological upheaval. In the Sahara Desert of Mauritania, there exists a geological formation so strange that astronauts first noticed it from space. It is called the Richat Structure, also known as the Eye of the Sahara. From above, it looks like a giant bullseye carved into the earth. It is a series of concentric circles stretching nearly 25 miles across. For decades, scientists believed it was an impact crater from a meteorite. But studies revealed no evidence of impact. Instead, the rings are layers of eroded rock, uplifted by geological forces and shaped by wind and water over millions of years. Officially, it is a deeply eroded geological dome. But when researchers began comparing the Richat structure to Plato's description of Atlantis, something extraordinary emerged. The dimensions are right. The circular shape is right. The location near the ocean might have been right. 11,000 years ago, the Sahara was not a desert. It was green, fed by rivers and lakes. The Atlantic coastline was much closer to the Richat structure than it is today. Sea levels were lower during the Ice Age, and when the ice melted, coastlines shifted dramatically. Could this massive circular formation, now buried in sand, once have been an island city described by ancient priests? Let us examine the evidence piece by piece. Plato said the plain of Atlantis was rectangular, surrounded by mountains on the north, and open to the sea on the south. The Richat structure sits on a plateau with higher elevations to the north and east, sloping downward toward what was once the Atlantic coast. Plato described alternating rings of land and water. The Richat structure has multiple concentric rings of varying elevation and composition. Satellite analysis shows these rings are made of different types of rock. Some are harder, some softer, some more resistant to erosion. When water flowed through this region thousands of years ago, these rings would have naturally created alternating barriers and channels. Plato mentioned a canal that allowed ships to pass from the outer ocean to the inner city. Just west of the Richat structure, there is a large linear depression cutting through the terrain. a dry riverbed that could have once served as a navigational channel. Plato also said Atlantis was rich in precious metals and stones. Geological surveys of the Richat area reveal deposits of copper, gold, and iron, as well as rare minerals not commonly found together. The size of the structure, roughly 40 kilometers in diameter, aligns with Plato's description of a capital city within a larger plain. The deeper you look, the more the details align. Plato wrote that Atlantis was destroyed in a single day and night by violent earthquakes and floods. If the Richat structure was once a coastal city, what could have caused its destruction? Around 11,600 years ago, Earth experienced one of the most dramatic climate events in recent history. It is called the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. Evidence suggests that a comet or asteroid struck the northern ice sheets, triggering rapid melting, massive flooding, and global temperature shifts. Sea levels rose by hundreds of feet. Coastlines vanished, entire ecosystems were drowned. In North Africa, this period marked the transition from a wet, fertile Sahara to the arid desert we see today. Rivers dried up, lakes evaporated, civilizations that may have thrived near water were forced to migrate or perish. If a coastal city existed near the Richat structure during this time, the combination of seismic activity, flooding, and climate collapse would have been catastrophic. The geological record shows evidence of ancient water flow around the Richat rings, signs of erosion that suggest massive sudden flooding. Could this have been the event Plato's sources remembered? A memory passed down through generations, preserved in the temples of Egypt, and finally recorded by a Greek philosopher who had no idea where the real location was. Plato claimed the story came from Egypt. Egyptian priests told Solon that their records went back thousands of years, far older than Greek history. They spoke of a war between Atlantis and the ancient Athenians, a conflict that ended when Atlantis sank. Mainstream historians assume this was a fictional tale meant to glorify Athens. But what if the priests were referencing a real conflict between Mediterranean cultures and a powerful civilization in North Africa? Ancient Egypt had trade routes extending deep into the Sahara. Archaeological evidence shows that Neolithic cultures in the region possessed advanced knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, and megalithic construction. The Nabta Playa stone circle in southern Egypt, dated to around 7,500 years ago, demonstrates that organized, sophisticated societies existed in the Sahara long before the rise of dynastic Egypt. If the Richat structure was once a hub of such a civilization, Egyptian records might have preserved its memory. The priests of Sais were known as keepers of ancient knowledge. They claimed their temple archives contained histories from before the Great Floods. It is possible they were describing events that occurred not in myth, but in deep prehistory, events that left physical traces we are only now beginning to recognize. One of the strangest details Plato provided was the metal called Orichalcum. He said it was second only to gold in value and that it covered the walls of Atlantis, glowing with a reddish light. For centuries, scholars thought this was pure fantasy, a made-up material to make the story sound exotic. But in recent years, shipwrecks off the coast of Sicily have been discovered carrying ingots of a copper-zinc alloy that matches ancient descriptions of Orichalcum. This alloy, when polished, glows with a bright golden red sheen. It was highly prized in the ancient Mediterranean world. The region around the Richat structure is rich in copper and zinc deposits. If an advanced society existed there, they would have had access to the raw materials needed to produce this alloy. The name itself, Orichalcum, comes from the Greek words for mountain and copper. It suggests a metal mined from mountainous regions, perhaps from North Africa. The fact that Plato mentioned a specific, verifiable material adds weight to the possibility that his account was based on real reports, not imagination. The glowing metal, the concentric rings, the sudden destruction, detail after detail continues to match. Of course, the Richat structure is not the only candidate for Atlantis. Over the years, researchers have proposed dozens of locations: Santorini in Greece, the island of Crete, the Azores, even Antarctica. Each theory has its supporters and its flaws. Santorini experienced a massive volcanic eruption around 1600 BC, which destroyed the Minoan civilization. Some believe this event inspired the Atlantis legend, but the timeline does not match. Plato placed Atlantis 9,000 years before Solon, not 1500. Crete was powerful and advanced, but it was never destroyed in a single day. The Azores are in the Atlantic, but there is no archaeological evidence of an ancient civilization there. Antarctica was covered in ice long before human civilization arose. The Richat Structure, on the other hand, matches Plato's timeline, his geographical description, and the physical evidence of sudden climate catastrophe. It also sits in a region with a documented history of advanced prehistoric cultures. No theory is perfect, but the Richat Structure comes closer than any other known site to fitting every detail Plato recorded. The question is no longer whether Atlantis could have existed. The question is whether we are willing to reconsider what we think we know about the ancient world. Mainstream archaeology remains skeptical. Most academics argue that Plato invented Atlantis as a literary device, a cautionary tale about hubris and the fall of civilizations. They point out that no ancient writer before Plato ever mentioned Atlantis, and no physical evidence of a sunken city has been found in the Atlantic Ocean. Geological surveys of the Richat Structure confirm it is a natural formation, not a man-made ruin. There are no walls, no buildings, no pottery shards. Critics say that seeing Atlantis in the eye of the Sahara is like seeing patterns in clouds, a case of confirmation bias. But supporters of the theory argue that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. 11,000 years of erosion, sand burial, and tectonic activity would erase most traces of surface structures. If the city was built primarily from wood, clay, and organic materials, almost nothing would survive. Advanced remote sensing technology, including ground-penetrating radar and satellite spectroscopy, has only recently been applied to the region. Some researchers claim to have detected geometric anomalies beneath the sand, potential signs of artificial construction. Excavation is difficult due to the remote location and political instability in the area. Until a major archaeological expedition is funded and conducted, the question remains open. The Richat Structure may be just a geological curiosity, or it may be the greatest archaeological discovery never confirmed. Whether or not the Richat Structure is Atlantis, its existence forces us to ask deeper questions. How much of human history have we lost? How many civilizations rose and fell before the ones we know about? For most of human existence, we have assumed that complex societies only began around 5,000 years ago, with Sumer and Egypt. But evidence keeps emerging that challenges this view. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, built 11,000 years ago, proves that monumental architecture existed long before agriculture. Submerged structures off the coasts of India and Japan suggest cities that were flooded when sea levels rose. The Richat Structure, with its precise circular geometry and alignment with ancient climate catastrophe, may be another piece of this puzzle. Plato wrote his account based on second-hand knowledge, filtered through generations. He may have gotten details wrong, he may have embellished, but the core of his story, a powerful civilization destroyed by natural disaster at the end of the Ice Age, fits the evidence better than we ever expected. The circles in the sand remain. The questions remain. And until we dig deeper, both literally and intellectually, the mystery of Atlantis will continue to haunt us. Perhaps the truth is not hidden in the ocean. Perhaps it has been staring at us from space all along, waiting for us to see it, waiting for us to remember.